Hey, what's up, everyone? Alex here. So today we're actually going to be having the Othello team match between Team Brazil and Team India. So I believe with Team Singapore initiating this team match concept is definitely catching on amongst many countries who have participated, and of course Brazil, who has actually participated in one of the team matches against Singapore, is also catching on this concept and is extremely thrilled to host other countries as well. So I believe Team Brazil has already played with Team Argentina and also Team Chile. So right now, Team Brazil is actually going to be taking on Team India. So I believe this is going to be a very good match. Team Brazil is relatively newer to Othello, and I think Team India might have a few experienced players in the form of Ashok and Mehu. So let's see how this team match goes. It should be a pretty exciting one. And of course, for today, I will actually be more of a spectator and commentator. So let's look forward to the match that is kicking off soon. So right now we have progressed into the playok.com website where we are under the game Reversi. So even though it's Othello, but on this website it's known as Reversi, and of course, one of the main most popular rooms is Phuket, and definitely most players would then be at the Phuket room where you have 100 over odd players. But for simplicity and a cleaner look, we've actually invited all players to enter the Tokyo room, which is 300. So right now we're just at the room lobby and just waiting for this pairings to kick off, and then the matches will start. So what I'll be doing today is to actually toggle within the lobby into from table to table for each round, just highlighting some of the key matches, and also try to interpret some of the moves that the players are playing, as well as perhaps provide some alternate perspectives for them, and of course for you at home as well. So right now we tune into round one, and this match is between Mickey and Amar Roy. So definitely, I think Amar Roy is an experienced player over here, but Mickey is also one of the top few Brazilian players. So this should be quite a good match between both of the players. So right now, I think Black is more adopting a very edge play stance, while White is adopting a very centralized position. So I think the position looks slightly in favor of White. Over here, there is a quiet move that Black can play to against this entire diagonal. And of course, Black could also choose to ignore that and jump into the center over here to e7. But of course, right now, White has two consecutive, or perhaps even three consecutive tempos along this entire column to play f3, f2, and f1. So right now, White has defended this edge. So typically, we don't really recommend defending this edge perhaps so strongly because in this particular instance, it might be attacked from behind. But in this case, Black has actually attack that unbalanced edge and allow White to form a cross. So right now, perhaps White could consider to play f3. Yep, so White does play f3, just a quick centralizing move. Over here, White could perhaps just continue to extend to f2, flipping 1, 2, 3 discs that are nestled in between. So in Othello, what you want to do is actually just flip discs that are more towards the inside of the group so that you don't really create more moves for your opponent so that you can dictate play. So over here, perhaps the natural progression would be for White to play out to h5, also to regroup discs, and at the same time, these are actually the more viable options that Black has remaining instead of the x square to the bottom left. So what you want to do as White is that just to continue to play within the same area where your remaining discs are for your opponent. So this is a quiet move that White took at f7, so that's fine. It's still a quick clean move. So over here, perhaps white would go to h3 for that poison move across. So let's see what happens. If white doesn't go here, perhaps white could also consider playing c1. So I think both players are in fact playing at quite a quick pace, so that's quite interesting to note, even though both players actually have 7 minutes thinking time. And the game has actually progressed pretty much to the late stage. So white has chosen to actually just jump out while black just defends the edge. So right now, white is probably thinking how to break the edge. So typically in this shape, a good way would be to just play to h3, whereby h4 is poison for black. Okay, for this case, white has elected to actually go to c1, perhaps to try to get black to move to b1, so black forms that unbalanced edge, and then white feels more comfortable going into g2 to give up the corner and to wedge into g1 and capture that corner in exchange. So that's a fair strategy as well. So let's see how that goes. So over here, white is probably going to continue with g2. Yep, so essentially just trying to sacrifice the corner, exchange for the wedge and one corner and extended edge. So that would probably be a fairly comfortable win for white in that case. Black has chosen to close in on this side. White can just adopt to play a 3 or 4 in a corner maneuver to the top right. So perhaps white could then choose to go to h2. White goes h2, black perhaps go for the diagonal control across to b2. White force feeds the corner to h3, and black captures the corner, white wedges, and white would then capture the top edge and the top left corner as well as the bottom left corner, and pretty much solidify his discs. So that's this game is probably wrapped up for a white victory. Okay, so black has indeed taken for that diagonal control, which is a fair move to make at this point in time, but white can seal the deal with playing by playing actually h3, as mentioned before, by force feeding that corner across. Oh, okay, so right now white doesn't go for h3, so that perhaps opens up the game a little bit. Black goes for the diagonal control to the bottom. White will probably grab this. So black would then grab the corner, which is probably the only move that makes sense at this point in time because black wouldn't self-swindle. And then white goes for that wedge. So without a change in parity over here, I believe it should still be a white comfortable win. So black goes down here, white grabs the corner, and both areas are in fact parity regions, meaning even square regions. So without a change in turn, it's very difficult for black to actually capture the victory. So right now black has played this move. Okay, so white just grabs the corner and the lead diagonal down, and that should be a comfortable win. Okay, so with white winning 43-21 in this one for round 1. So this would be the feature match for round 1. So let's move on to round 2. So right now we tune into round 2 and the feature match between Mehu and Koichi. So this is quite an interesting mid-game situation where black has elected to actually form a one pocket square to the edge. So I think looking at the game situation right now, it should be slightly in favor more towards black. And black has quite a good control right now, and probably more options. So black has elected to just do that straight cut down the line into the middle, just begging a response for white to grab that edge. Because if white doesn't take it, black would then grab the edge with a tempo control. So since white has actually ignored that tempo, this game has suddenly become slightly more one-sided, perhaps. So let's see how that turns out. So by right, a rule of thumb would mean that if you feed an edge and your opponent doesn't take it, yep, you should take it. So Mehu has done that very beautifully. And of course, securing that edge would gain Mehu 2 tempos. So right now, white is a bit stuck in a dilemma. So perhaps the only safe move for white right now is to either b5 or h3. So with a strong edge play, I believe black should actually be able to easily wrap up that game. So think let's do something different this time and just try to toggle to a different game for round 2 and check out what the others are doing. So let's go for this game over here and take a quick look. Okay, so in this situation here, white has an edge below and also to the top. Black is occupying the center. So I think black has a little bit more control, but okay, so right now black has chosen to attack the edge. So white is obligated here to actually respond for tempo. So white has captured that tempo across. Black is centralizing. Um, so I think black is still trying to perhaps try to hold on to the mid-game tempo. So white has cut out to the edge, and black would then jump in. Yep, and white grabs the edge. So if you look at the game, it's very apparent that white's strategy is to grab the edge while black is trying to centralize. So perhaps the only safe move right now for black is to just go for this c square to h7. So right now black has elected to jump to the edge, which may not be so favorable, but I think his motive is to actually hope for white to respond by grabbing this unbalanced edge and then feed across. So that's a fair strategy as well. So yep, white has grabbed the unbalanced edge. Black is going to go for g1, feed off the corner to h1 so that he can wedge and exchange for that lower right corner as well as the extended edge on the right and also to the bottom. So I think that's one of the few options that black has. So I think that's a fairly good strategy across, and white seems to actually be running out of time. So yeah, so instead of committing to the corner and giving that to black, white is playing a poison move. So if white doesn't want to actually grab that, yep. So a6 would be the logical option. And then perhaps white is just going to extend over here to b6 to just try to avoid playing this. But I believe from a tempo point of view, black might have the upper edge over here. Black is just going to grab the edge, perhaps. Or black could also consider b7 to force white to give up. Or if not, black could then also consider playing g2, which is still a poison move across. So let's see how that goes. Okay, so right now, yeah, you basically have black forcing that corner across. And right now white is just trying to grab the edge. I think white is running out of time, so it's going to be extremely tough for white. Black is just going to grab this. Oh, okay, so white has actually an opportunity to go for that double tempo. So white can go for this, yep, which white has successfully captured that. And black would then be slow to actually cover a1. So right now black has to grab that across. And perhaps black would then play a7, yep, to go for parity. So it's still going to be a black win over here, 37 to 27, but the end game did seem a little unexpected, perhaps. So that's quite a hard-fought win by Harder. Okay, so let's move on to round 3. So right now we step into round 3 of the Team Brazil versus Team India match. So this featured match is going to be highlighting Ashok versus Koichi. And Ashok, I believe he is one of the top few players from India, and I think I first met him in person at the World Othello Championship 2014 back in Bangkok. So right now the game is progressing pretty fast on a typical book variation for Swift Boat or Tanida, and I think right now both players are still in book with White just trying to grab that center shape. Black is probably gonna either do G4 or cut across, yep, to C7, and this would probably be the book sequence. Yep. So I think both players seems fairly knowledgeable of the big book sequence, and right now Black is just centralizing. So I think this is a fairly common book sequence for the diagonal opening to Swift Boat. So far, nothing unexpected on both ends. White chipping across, just trying to grab multiple tempo. So if Black doesn't guard G8, White would essentially be able to capture F8 and control this diagonal line across and go for consecutive tempo to D8. So let's see whether Black responds here. And if Black doesn't respond here, Black would perhaps need to grab one of these two white discs in order to re-establish that excess cut back into the center. Okay, so Black doesn't do that. So right now, White actually has an opportunity to grab F8, which, yep, White does. So that's very sharp of Ashok to actually capture this mini diagonal White. And now that Black has chased after it, and White cannot guard this, so White would then jump in to feed off that unbalanced edge. And if Black were to choose to grab this, White would then wedge, which is a very nice maneuver by White, to B7. So B7 is essentially a wedge that sacrifices a corner, but White would then be able to jump in for a wedge and then grab this corner as well as 6 stable discs. So that's a fair trade for White. So Black has elected to go on top. White cannot play to the top here because it would unpoison a quiet move for Black here. So right now this is the reasonable approach for White to just cut out diagonally. And if Black feeds off the edge, White will simply grab a very simple balance edge. So Black should perhaps go for G3 over here. And if Black were to interact with the top left disc of White's here, this would open up a quiet move for White to consecutively play to G3 and potentially also gain a tempo to the edge to the right. So Black must respond to G3 over here just to sort of hold off the tempo and just continue to maintain the center shape. Okay, Black doesn't, so White is definitely going to grab the edge. So I'm thinking Black is probably not going to interact with this disc following White's H6. So the option here would be Black to perhaps grab G7 and X square, but just trying to maintain that equilibrium shape across. Okay, so Black does take G7, so that makes perfect sense. So over here, White is, yep, probably going to grab that as the only safe move across and just wait for Black's response. Black grabs down the entire row. White will probably grab F2 over here as a poison move and just maintain that center shape, gaining access to that corner. So right now Black has an access to this corner to the bottom left, and White in exchange has a corner. So it's more or less fairly even, but I believe the game situation is slightly in favor of White over here. And also White has natural parity, so if the game, all else equal, would actually result in a slight advantage for White towards the end game due to natural parity. Okay, so right now it seems that Black is forced to the right and just progressing towards the edge, and right now White would then be able to just simply secure the edge, perhaps, or even play the X square. If White takes H2, it would then perhaps present itself as an opportunity for Black to wedge if White were to follow up with the corner in the future. So I think White is hesitant to take H6 h2 almost 2 immediately. So for me, I guess if I were white, I might also consider the x square. Another alternative is also this x square, perhaps just for tempo's sake. So let's see what happens. Okay, black has elected to actually chip off to the left, and white has in fact gone for that corner. Okay, which is a little bit unexpected because right now black is just going to jump into wedge. So I think that might have been a little too early for white, but black has actually gone in to actually gain access down the line to the corner. So white is defending that pocket right now, just trying to secure parity perhaps. So over here it is a dangerous position for white perhaps. White could actually play into an odd region to the bottom left, securing parity, but black would then potentially go to g1 to try to close off parity. But I think white would then be able to do a swindle over here to d1 because d1 black doesn't have access to f1, but if black plays consecutively to the left and create that access, it should still not affect the final result of white capturing parity. So I believe black is unable to overturn parity in this situation, so it should be a fairly easy closeout for white. Okay, so black did go for that across, and white goes for that swindle, and black chases for that excess. So right now, black has that wedge move. I believe the corner might have been too early, which resulted in this wedge situation. So over here in this 5 square region, white should easily just go for that diagonal cut. By a rule of thumb, you would then go for a parity. But right now, it almost seems that due to the 3-disc wedge over here, with white capturing the corner a little too early, it might actually be a little too tight for white to actually capture back sufficient number of discs. So right now, white might have to consider playing to either one of the c squares or the x squares, or if not, giving up the corner. This is entirely too strong, so playing the corner earlier was a little bit too hasty, perhaps, that created the parity region for black, and therefore this very strong control along this horizontal row here. So right now it almost seems like white probably loses by a narrow margin due to giving up this interior part. So if we just go back to the history over here, instead of white capturing this, which seems a bit unnatural and forced for the top right region, white should in fact actually go for that swindle and make black chase after the excess. White wedges in, black goes in. Then it's fine for actually white to play to the left first, and then after the left has been resolved, black would then be forced to play either one of these two moves that gives white that secured edge to the right. So right now, because of that exchange that seems a bit too forced, it almost seems difficult for white to actually gain sufficient number of discs because white gave up this region over here to the right that has given black way too many stable discs. And I believe there's no way for white to actually overturn that result. So perhaps over here in this situation, white's best bet is to just try for the x square instead of the c square. That is too straightforward perhaps. Okay, so right now, indeed, the end result is black winning, just with the overwhelming win. Definitely due to the top right over here with that secured zone. So unfortunately, white couldn't convert the big win, even though white had parity. So right now, after 3 rounds of games, we actually like to check back on the scoreboard, and obviously Brazil is proving me wrong and playing really, really well compared to India this time round. So I think definitely Brazil has an abundance of online game experience right now with 4 team matches in play. So perhaps that is working in their favor a bit. And right now Brazil leads 10 points to 8. So just 3 more rounds to go, and let's see what the end result will be. So I think just to recap, my prediction was actually 15 to 21. I hope Brazil doesn't blame me for that. So let's see how the end result goes. But kudos to Team Brazil, very well played. So let's tune in to the round 4 match between Som and raulseixas. I believe raulseixas is actually having a great day with 3 straight wins so far, if I'm not wrong. And definitely over here, Som would actually not be a weak player as well. I think their rating wise, let's take a look. It's pretty much similar. You have a 1600 player against a 1500 player. So that's a very interesting matchup as well right now. So I think he's indicated that he's played a misclick, but he asked to undo the turn. So I think that's been granted, perhaps. So let's see how that goes. So right now it's Black's turn to play. I think this looks like Heath opening. Okay, so no, this is actually a bat opening. That looks like a rotated Heath for sure. So that's interesting. So right now, if you're Black, where would you play? Perhaps you could consider just keeping to your side of the board, playing to an edge move like a3, or if that is too much poison, you should just consider jumping to the center and maintaining that center shape. I would actually favor e6 a little bit more at this point in time, since white has beautifully controlled this mini diagonal, so that is very important to centralizing. And of course, right now black jumps in to try to attempt to cut back into the center, but white has a very beautiful control move back right over here to b5. So that move probably wouldn't prove to be too effective. So I am expecting white to just sort of regroup over here and just continue that line control right now. Okay, so definitely white seems to be slightly more in control of the center and also the entire board position of the mid game. Okay, so right now black has elected to jump into the center, so that's nice. And white controls and continues to control that central line. So I think right now white should be slightly ahead, but I think it's still very close. And black has played a very nice edge play move to try to gain tempo consecutively to play to a3 and followed by a4. So right now I think both players are just trying to control the center as much as possible, and black is more trying to work his way around gaining tempo from the edge. Okay, so white has played edge move over here. So that's a fairly interesting move. Right now, I can't really seem to tell the exact intention, but he perhaps is trying to gain more tempo to the edge and sort of wait for black to respond to c1. Yep, and white would perhaps play to e1 and feed off that edge. So white is really trying to just control the center while black is almost adopting an edge play approach. So I think given the current situation, it almost seems like black has managed to wrestle back control and a little bit more ahead perhaps. Okay, so white has indeed played off the edge for black. I believe black should take it given his edge play configuration right now, and I think he should be fairly confident of his tempo. White would then commit to the center over here of this particular group and just jump in. Yep. So that is the natural progression of tempo play, but I think black is probably a little too strong on the edge right now. So even though white captures the center early on, but right now white has perhaps given up too much edge tempo. Okay, so over here black has played a4. There is an opportunity for white to get consecutive tempo. Instead of just surrendering the edge by playing a5, white can play a6. Yep, so white plays a6 as a beautiful tempo. maneuver where black doesn't have immediate access to play within that same region to a5. And instead, black would have to chase after the access. And white can essentially jump into a5 as well. But white has decided that perhaps it's not too much of a rush. If it were me, yeah, perhaps this could work as well. And then you can still hold off this a bit more because if black would have just blocked that move, it would involve flipping two more exposed discs on the outside. That would potentially create more moves for white. So right now, black is probably in a tough spot over here. The game looks fairly even to me right now. Black elects to cut out. White can no longer defend his position. It's going to block. That makes sense. And right now, white would grab the edge to gain tempo. So by grabbing this edge, white essentially controls two mini diagonals along this line and also this line. So white does indeed take up the left edge. So right now, it almost seems like the game has moved from a black edge and white center into a reverse where white actually captures the edge. And black loses a lot of tempo. So right now, white is just going to sink in over here, flipping three discs on the inside with no moves created for black on the outside. And black is essentially forced right now. So I think the situation has actually changed pretty much. And right now it's in favor of white. So two consecutive moves for black here. Black is going for b7, b8, followed by b7. So perhaps white could actually block off the excess for black to b7, which is being contributed or provided by the f3 disc for black. So what you can do is to actually just try to remove this. So white could consider g4. Okay, so white does play a little bit of an extreme move, but it's a very beautiful x square with an exchange and an extended diagonal control. So right now it almost seems like white is entirely dominating this game. So that's very impressive. So white grabs the edge. Black, it's not much of a choice, gives white a quiet move. So right now, white has in fact controlled the game with a very beautiful diagonal control. So if he were to push one move forward, it would probably mean playing this. I'm not too sure if that's too much at this point in time. Alternatively, he could go for the corner in exchange for this move and just go down to b2 for parity to the top left. If he does play to h2, which is an extreme diagonal line control, black would probably follow with this diagonal control, and white would definitely need to find an excess, perhaps to the corner. So perhaps white, black, white, black, white, black. So I think white is having difficulty just trying to close out the game here. So the safer approach would perhaps be to grab the corner over here and allow black to just wedge, and white should just go for parity to b2. Okay, so white does go for that corner access, giving up the wedge, but perhaps closing off the top left that way may not be as ideal, because if black were to be able to somehow capture the corner access by a wedge to the left, black would actually gain consecutive tempo to the corner and also the x square. So right now, white is controlling this excess out, so that's a very beautiful move. So I think white now has a very easy closeout since black has taken the x square. With not much of a choice, I think white should be able to easily establish a corner excess, maybe perhaps over here to e6. Okay, so white does do that and basically captures that access to the corner. This should be an easy wrap-up game for white. Okay, so right now, after a few more moves are exchanged, I believe should be a fairly easy wrap-up for white. white would just go perhaps over here to g8. Okay, so white has indeed gone for the easy parity access, grab the corner, and then probably grab the corner to the bottom left, wrap up the game with parity. Okay, so that's the end of round 4. So right now, just tuning into round 5. Let's take a quick look over the games. And right now, I believe the team score is tied at 12 apiece. So Team Brazil and Team India is really going neck and neck right now with the last 2 rounds to go, the final 12 points to really fight for. So let's see how this team match goes. Over here right now, it's the typical diagonal opening to the sailboat. And right now, black has actually played this tank variation, just cutting out here. So that's pretty interesting. Um, Perhaps let's do something interesting and just toggle to other games as well. So right now you can see there are 6 tables ongoing with that team match going on. And right now let's go for table 2 and look at the situation over here. So the game has pretty much progressed fairly quickly over here where black seems to be playing slightly smaller and slightly more in control of the game. But black playing to b5 actually opens up potentially a quiet move to c2. And if white were to take it, black would then be able to jump into the center over here. Let's just toggle and jump into a couple more other games. So right now, black has feed off the edge for white to grab that unbalanced edge. I believe white should be able to come out on top of this with an additional tempo over here and one more tempo to g3. So white would play here and could consecutively follow here. That would be favorable for white. Black doesn't seem to have too many moves on the outside, just 1 and 2 moves. If black were to split it, white would capture the edge, and essentially black is left with just one more move or tempo behind. So over here, perhaps white could choose to centralize. I believe this game should be slightly more favorable towards white. Let's jump over and toggle to another game. Table 4. Okay, so right now, black is just feeding off the edge to white. Black seems to be in great form, I believe. Raul is actually doing pretty well today. I'm not too sure if he's on straight wins, but he definitely seems to be dominating the field right now. So black has jumped out, and white takes out, and black goes for that centralizing move. Over here, white should probably respond to a poison move or centralizing. Either one works, I believe. So white jumps out. Black regroups to the right. White could grab the edge. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense now. Black could either grab to c8 or just feed off that unbalanced edge. But if black were to jump in, white could cut back and control this mini diagonal across. So perhaps black could either go to a2 or c8 as the relatively safer options. So I think a2 seems fine. Okay, so c8. So let's move on and just jump between games and look for table 5. So right now this game seems pretty interesting. White has taken a diagonal cut across, controlled this entire line. So white is looking to be in the driver's seat of this one. I think white has a balance edge, which is a strong one, and have that centralizing control access. So seems pretty favorable for white at the moment. So black playing the X square, white could perhaps chase for that control. I mean that corner access. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, black will go for that full diagonal control, so it's almost a very risky play, but black is evidently adopting to do that. White could perhaps play to d8 to just sort of wait for one move. Instead, white is going up for a little bit too strong an approach to just try to force that access, but is unable to do so. So again, over here, because of that, black has this entire diagonal control, which is very hard for white to break. Okay, since black has played to d8, white can then cut in for this access and go for the corner. So let's toggle to the last table over here. Oh, the game has actually ended, and I think the game has progressed pretty quickly. So with black winning 33 to 31. So let's take a quick look perhaps at the game by playing back that game. So I think over in this situation, black took a fairly early control of the game by forcing white into the corner, and in fact, black should probably have won a little bit more than the final result. Yep, and probably somehow parity and the game progression probably allowed white back into the game. So that's fairly interesting, and also the attractive thing about Othello is that you never know what the end result is sometimes, because when the game becomes really complicated in the end, it would really be easy to just reverse situation. So over here, let's check back at table one. It seems that Ashok has already taken control with an edge in hand, also the access to the corner as well as the second corner. So this game seems to be wrapped up for white. Let's toggle to table two, which also seems to be ending, and I think the players are playing pretty fast. So white has parity, but black is able to capture parity to the top. White is going to go for this wedge and go for two tempos. The game looks fairly close. So black grabs this, white jumps in, and black basically only has that option to take the corner. So I think white actually wins this one with parity, and also probably the last three moves belonging to white due to how the bottom left corner is configured, where white would be able to capture the corner and also the X square. So it should be almost a 35 this for white perhaps, based on that count, a quick count. So let's move on to the next table, check out the situation here. So right now white has in fact grabbed control of this game fairly nicely. White grabs the access to the corner, black will probably continue with the diagonal control, white would just penetrate across and win the game with parity. Let's move on to the final table. So the game has ended over here with black winning. I think Raul might actually have won the individual top, if I'm not wrong, based on the results. But we'll see. I'll take a look at the end result in a moment after the end of round 5, and also with a final round in play. So right now, just stepping into round 6, the final round of the team match between Team Brazil and Team India. So for this round, I'm going to be featuring this match between Ashok and Raul. So I believe Ashok is one of the top few players in India, and definitely Raul is on 5 out of 5 wins right now. So this should be a great match. So over here, the opening has opened to Tanida. And so this particular variation is fairly common. Black probably going for the quiet move. Okay, black doesn't go. Black goes for the intersecting move, and white goes for that intersecting back, the cross back. Black would then perhaps follow to this move at f1, which feeds e1 for white, and black would then go for the a square swindle, uh, sorry, b square, a square swindle, and force white to grab the unbalanced edge to g1 to not lose tempo. So right now, expecting black to play to c1 over here. Okay, so black does take the c1 move. So white will have to respond in order not to lose tempo. Black jumps out to g5. Fairly loud move, but it's a line control sort of move. So that's pretty interesting. Black will probably follow with either e8 or f7. So I believe with that exchange, white actually might be slightly ahead now. White would probably go for either the edge cut out to centralize, or maybe just jump in simply to d6 over here. I think this probably looks more probable, or yeah, this probably looks more likely. Okay, so white does go for h4, a beautiful quiet cut move across, leaving black with not much of a choice. Black would probably have to go for the hard h6 for the hard line control. Okay, black doesn't go for that, so now that opens up probably quite a few gaps for white to exploit, in fact. So white has just regrouped to the right, creating that disc to g4, which allows white to potentially capture consecutive tempo to d7 and then followed by d6 in the future. If white plays d7 right now, he establishes this horizontal line control that black is unable to access right into d6 in response. So essentially, if white were to be able to maintain that access across, white would be able to capture both moves. And before that, even before that, white would be able to play f8 to set up a tempo force for black to either capture an ugly unbalanced edge, or if black were to play elsewhere, white would actually capture that edge and a nice tempo and essentially run black out of moves to the right. So right now it's very much in favor for white, and it seems that Raul is in a prime position to actually close out this team match with 6 out of 6 wins. So let's quickly perhaps jump across tables again. Let's check out how the others are doing. So in table 1, you have Mehu against Karl Barks. So right now, it does seem that white has captured an early corner. Not too sure how that played out, but black has mobility advantage, perhaps. So right now, black perhaps would just go right into f7 for that quiet move across to ensure some dis along the e column so that black can jump out in the future. Yep. So this looks slightly in favor for black, perhaps, I would guess, but it's going to be quite challenging for black to play out the winning line. Black definitely has the advantage in terms of mobility, so we'll see how that goes. Fairly interesting games here. So let's go to the next table and take a look here. This game is wrapping up. So I believe white right now loses parity, but perhaps gains enough discs. So white wins with 33. That's an interesting result for our last game. Let's go to table 4 and have a look. So this game is also wrapping up right now with white winning very strongly with parity. And of course the final table over here, black seems to be also in a difficult position. perhaps. So white seems to be in a very comfortable lead with the closeout for parity as well. So perhaps white could jump in to a6, create that c4 disc that would give himself access over here. Or white could just simply just go for that h7 move. Yeah, but before h7, instead of poisoning this entire horizontal row, what you would want to do is actually grab a6, which is still a quiet move for now, to close off the game. So this looks fairly tight. White, black, white, black, white. White still retains parity, but it seems like a very close game. Okay, white has jumped in, which is kind of strange, surrendering the corner and the edge. So right now, perhaps black would then be able to capture the edge. White goes in here. Black feeds off and grabs the c square. I think it should be a narrow win for black, perhaps. Okay, so white actually gives black that opportunity to sweep across. So that's unfortunately potentially a mistake by white, allowing black to just dig out those interior discs. So right now, black follows with a2, a1, and black wins the game. So I believe with that, most of the games might be completing. Let's take a quick look back at the original table we were observing. So now the game seems to be in an interesting position where black has played a cross-back move and established a line control along this one over here. So white still seems to be comfortably in the lead in terms of tempo. So I think this game should be an easy closeout for white. Okay, so right now it almost seems like white has carved out that balance edge to the bottom. Right now, black just playing that poison move across. So over here, it would be fair to say that white can grab the edge or even give up the top edge and the top right corner in order to wedge. So that's an option as well. But so these these three squares to the top right together with this pocket actually forms an even zone. You probably wouldn't want to go in first. So right now, white could probably elect to go to a poison move to b3 because black is approaching the edge, and a6 seems to be a poison move that is unattractive. So over here, yep, b3 would be that option to actually poison this move across. Black would then actually jump in, and perhaps white would just go through here. Just a little bit wary of the diagonal control that black might play over here. So black has an opportunity for a nice diagonal control, which he does pick that up. So that's great for black. So I think initially white seems to be leading quite a lot, but right now black seems to have a slight opportunity to actually turn this around. So I believe most of the players are checking in back on this table just to see the final result. Based on the few games that I've looked through and just surveyed across, I think Brazil might actually have won this team match with a narrow margin, and definitely some great games going on here. Okay, white has actually elected to give up the corner. So that is going to be a difficult situation for both players in the end game with such a short amount of time, just trying to count that across. So when your opponent gives you an option like that, usually you would then try to count blind and consider that most direct option. If you choose somewhere else, it might be difficult to count the tempo because white would then grab this edge to the top. I believe black might have been better off playing h1 perhaps, but let's see how this diagonal control goes. Reason being, white can essentially still play h2 and cut across for that corner access, which is going to be probably play a huge part towards the endgame result. White going in, threatening this, black has to jump in to defend this line. White would then come back down with black taking that final sweep, or white could sweep off this to prevent black from taking the entire horizontal row first. But if that were to happen, black would swindle. Okay, but white actually prevents that swindle because white is able to control this mini diagonal across. So that is a fantastic game for white towards the end game. And unfortunately, Ashok drops this game. And I believe with that, let's go on and take a look at the final result. So after 6 rounds of exciting gameplay, we arrive at the final result of the Team Brazil versus Team India match. So astonishingly, I think initially Brazil actually started off very, very well, taking the lead. And of course, India fought back. And finally, we actually arrived at the result of a draw in the team score with both teams taking 18 points apiece. And of course, if we were to actually select one of the team as a winner, the discount would then probably naturally form as the tiebreaker, with India actually taking this one from with 1196, 1196 this to 1108. So this was in fact, very close match, and definitely Brazil has proven me wrong with an extremely impressive performance in this team match. So we also have the individual rankings. So definitely Raul, who is actually Vitor, who congratulations go to him to actually achieving the individual first place of this team match. And definitely the MVP of Team India was Ashok, taking the second place. And of course, Anwar, I think Stepman, is actually taken the bronze position over here. So thank you for tuning in to this match, and I hope you enjoyed this Othello Team Match brought to you by the Othello Academy. And thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to the next team match between exciting national teams across the globe.